The opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Cable 14, its sponsors, or its shareholders, Cogeco Cable, Shaw Cable, and Source Cable Limited.
Welcome to the O Show. I'm Laura Babcock, joined as always with Loren Lieberman. We'll say hi to Loren in just a second. But first, here's what's coming up on the show. We've got a packed agenda, a lot happening in town. First, we're going to get into a report card on council. How did the mayor do? How did council do? And what are some people saying about it? We're going to talk about the Heritage Committee. Is it disorganized? Is that why some buildings are coming down without a lot of protest? We'll get into that. Also, what's happening between the city and Tiffany Street? Yes, it's more Pan Am problems. We'll get into all of that, and a major campaign launched last week to help with the homeless crisis here in Hamilton. But first, let's say hi to Loren. How's it going?
Good, you?
Good, but I'm so sick of the Movember stashes, yours in particularly. Councillor Farr and I had a thing on Twitter about it this morning.
Growing this is a full-time job. It's a commitment.
I cannot wait. I mean, yours is kind of Wyatt Earpy. But yes. Councillor Farr's, as I told him when I saw it in the spec this morning, got to get rid of it.
It just looked like he had dirt on the top of his lip.
It's not working for me.
No, it's not good.
Okay, we've got such a full agenda. Let's get right into it. Let's talk about midterm report on council. Loren, just the facts on this, please.
Absolutely. Report card. Quote, as Bob Patina hits the halfway mark of his 4-year run, I can say without reservation that so far, he's the weakest of the lot. Close quote, Andrew Dreschel, the spec. Quote, the odd thing is, at the same time Hamilton has a weak mayor, council is effectively pulling together like never before.
Okay, so Andrew Dreschel said this in regards to, if we ran the whole column, he talked about the 4 mayors that he had observed, you know, in his role, and they were, of course, Bob, Fred, and Larry. And now he's talking about the current Bob mayor. But I, went on to Twitter and asked Councillor Marula what he thought about the coverage in The Spectator, which was, in Dreschel's column, harsh towards the mayor and favourable towards council. And this is what Marula tweeted me. You can have a look at that. He said, agreed, has never been better, and compared to the rest of the country, one of the best. He's referring to council. When I asked him if he had any evidence of that, he said he's a political watcher and sort of pays attention. I asked if there were any sort of stats to back it up. Nothing really, more of, I think, of a gut feeling watching the rest of the country's councils. Certainly this week, yesterday, we saw the implosion of the Toronto City Council with Mayor Ford being told by a judge he has to vacate his seat in 14 days. There might be a stay based on an appeal. But really, does Councillor Marula have a point here, Loren, that council's doing extremely well? And what about the criticism by Andrew Dreschel of Mayor Bertina? When I put that on Facebook on, I think it was, Saturday afternoon, and said, what do people think? Is this fair to say he's the weakest of the last 5 mayors? I had 55 comments within a couple of hours, and as you were watching it, it got pretty brutal. There's some people out there who are staunch defenders of Mayor Bertina and a lot of people who don't think he's been doing a good job. So what's your take on this? Is this fair?
I think it's fair to say that most of council is not in love with our mayor. And I also think that good chunks of the media do not appreciate our mayor. For me, as a taxpayer, I don't care about either of those two. Those 2 points don't matter. But everybody seems to say council is not only getting along better, but more importantly, getting more things done. Whether that's in spite of the mayor, because of the mayor, he's only one vote, he's the leader and abstention, it doesn't matter. That he is our mayor when things are positive and things are getting done. That's the bottom line.
Mm-hmm. Well, you make an interesting point, because some of the argument is council, and a common enemy unites. Do they dislike the mayor such that they've found a way to work together in spite of him? Or is his style of leadership, which Andrew Dreschel finds to be lacking, is it working? Is it allowing council to operate effectively? I think, as you said, when history will look back and judge it, they'll say, well, did the city of Hamilton operate well during those years? And who was the mayor at the time?
I think a mayor's legacy is based on the achievements during his term, not newspaper clippings from Andrew Dreschel's column.
So that's an interesting point as well, because if you're following the Facebook dialogue on my pages, I know you were, Loren, one of the things that I said to one of the mayor's supporters were, rather than just calling the mayor's detractors names, let's see if you can provide for us, from your perspective, a list of the mayor's achievements. And so, you know, he came back, this particular person on Facebook, and said, you know, well, look at the Heck 5 file. You know, look at what happened with taxes. Look at what happened with getting the Pan Am deal done and a host of other things. So now, whether you credit that with council, whether you credit that with the mayor, I think you make a good point. People will look at this term and say, what is being done? I thought that the criticism, calling him the weakest so far, you know, in the lot of all those mayors, was a little unfair. And also, somebody pointed out on Facebook that how do you judge a post-amalgamation mayor with these pre-amalgamation mayors? Because it's a totally different city to try to govern than the years of Bob Morrow.
The Emma Riley Citizens Panel report card was altogether different than I don't think this was a report card. I think Andrew was vicious, and oftentimes as a spec reader, I enjoy it.
But has it gotten too personal between
the
two?
No, what was missing for me is what did Mayor Bob recently do to warrant that? I get it. Spec is not a big fan of Bertina and Mr. Dreschel, especially. A 2-year summary of, I didn't think it was warranted. I was missing what it is specifically Bob has done now to
So no doubt there were some missteps, some communication problems. They raised to Peggy that was so controversial. I mean, there were some issues at the beginning, but
ancient history and politically though.
And the city seems to be operating well. Add to the fact that we saw, and this is why I brought it up, the implosion of, you know, Mayor Ford's reign, if you will, in Toronto. It makes our council and our mayor look like they're functioning pretty well. So I agree with you. I thought it was overstated. Now, to the citizens panel, if you sort of take all these different citizens that were asked for their opinions, and they rated it on everything from infrastructure through to social service action, they gave high points for sort of more of the social service actions that council's been taking, and lower points on infrastructure. But across the board, it was pretty good marks. I didn't see any failing grades. Did you?
No, I'm not necessarily sure that I would have picked that panel as a taxpayer. They seemed a little special interest-y for my take.
Well, they all kind of were. They were all experts in their own regard.
Right.
Our Cable 14's own Larry Deanne was there as the political insider guy as well. He weighed in. But let's jump off from here. So I think you and I are in agreement. It was too harsh on the Mayor and Adams opinion column, and the citizen panel, while all vested interests, I thought they did a pretty good job on that. So let's pick up on the area where they said council is doing particularly well, and that's in its response to some of these social service issues. One of them, of course, being poverty. There were some downloading by the province on discretionary benefits. We've talked about a lot on this program. 1 in 5 Hamiltonians is in poverty. These are really daunting and difficult times for people in our city. And so council had to step up. They had to bridge the gap. There's the issue of the startup benefit being cancelled that helps prevent poverty starting January 1. So these are important issues. Council is doing its best to fill the gap. And an important campaign was launched this past week to help them, Lauren. Do you want to do only the facts on this?
Absolutely. Okay, here is only the facts. How's the weather? There's a crisis of homelessness for women in Hamilton. Women are turned away 300 times a month from Hamilton emergency shelters. Canadian women have an average life expectancy of 81 years, homeless women 39. The Women's Housing Planning Collaborative launched How's the Weather campaign to help eradicate homelessness in Hamilton. The campaign urges people to go to howstheweather.ca to find out ways to help homeless women now.
And I think an important point on this, Lauren, is that it's not saying that there's not also a terrible situation for homeless men in the city. It's just looking at the unique needs of women, and those stats are pretty alarming. Now, of course, I'm volunteering, helping on this. I was asked to, and it's been my pleasure once I realized the state of the crisis in our community. So we're going to run a little video now, which you'll see me have a role in with the How's the Weather launch that took place this week. Let's have a look at that now.
If you accept that we're all going to ask how's the weather 5 times a day, and we're going to try to get it into your subconscious that it's about homelessness as a second thought. And if we accept that those statistics are real, which they are, you know, they're proven out, and we have a website, howstheweather.ca, that gives you all the details. And if we accept that the women affected are our mothers and our daughters and our sisters and our cousins and our nieces and our aunts and our grandmothers, then don't we have to accept the moral imperative that every woman in Hamilton deserves a home?
I'd like to share with you a poem I wrote on July 7th, 2011. It truly reflects how I felt facing homelessness once again. This poem is entitled Drowning in Life. I'm over my head in this water I tread, over my head, and I'm feeling exhausted. I'm over my head in this water I tread, over my head, and I'm feeling frightened. I'm over my head in this water I tread, over my head, and I'm feeling alone. I'm over my head in this water I tread, over my head, and the light is fading. I'm over my head in this water I tread, over my head, and I'm afraid of the dark. I'm over my head in this water I tread, over my head, and I'm losing hope. I'm over my head in this water I tread, over my head, and it's getting hard to breathe. I'm over my head in this water I tread, over my head. I see hands out to me, but I cannot reach them. I'm over my head in this water I tread, over my head. Can't someone please save me?
When you look around and you talk about how's the weather, the 50 times you're going to do it, this would count how many times you get asked the question. I want you to think about, after you figured out what you're going to wear and what it means to the whole Canadian conversation and to your life, I want you to think about what it means to the lives of the women in this city who have no options. I mean, at the end of the day, if they're getting turned away and they're feeling hopeless. When I heard that poem, Glenna, that you just get about I'm treading water, I'm over my head. You know, I almost drowned once, and I'm a little claustrophobic, and I could barely sit through you telling that poem. The thought that that's how you felt because you couldn't get the help that you needed, I think gives us all the moral imperative that every woman in Hamilton deserves a home.
Okay, well, you obviously know how I feel about the issue. And by the way, Glenna, who spoke at the launch on Thursday, is currently homeless. So it was very brave of her, and she really inspired us with that and other poems. Loren, what's your take on all this?
You've put me in a difficult situation.
Of course.
I'm not entirely comfortable to suggest to you and the viewers that I have some discomfort with the gender specificness of this campaign. The poverty issue probably resonates better when we're talking about children in poverty. But to suggest that homelessness has specific needs and reaches women differently, like, I get that, but it doesn't sit entirely right. It doesn't.
And I understand that completely, and I won't be a defender of the campaign except to say that one of the other speakers at the launch, and I think it's been covered by local media extensively, and there's a website, brought to the fact that poverty is a crisis in this community, homelessness as well, finding sustainable, safe housing. There's thousands of men and women on the waiting list for that. The reason why women are being highlighted is, and these aren't even women with children who have access to different kinds of shelters, it's just for single women who are going to the door and not being able to get emergency beds in our city. It's raising the awareness on that. Does it take away or negate the other problems? It certainly does not.
No,
it's just trying
and nor
to
do
make
I think
sure
it was the intention, but just
yeah, you bring up an excellent point.
It does resonate a little bit weirdly.
Yeah.
I think there's something that I learned from reading a lot of the media coverage. So people who do not have their own and stable housing are homeless. When you're couch surfing, when you're just scrounging. So homelessness does not mean living on the streets. It means you don't have somewhere stable to go.
Not in all cases.
No. But it's included in that too. And I'm not taking away from the homelessness tag with that. The point I want to make in regards to that is, as it is getting cold, as the weather is changing, should you have someone in your life, reach out to make sure that all of us are warm, so that nobody. It's one thing to not have your own place in stable housing. It's a whole lot worse to try and sustain yourself through a Canadian winter out of doors.
Absolutely.
And let's please not let that level of homelessness be much of an issue in our city at all, please.
No, I agree, Loren, and you said it beautifully. And there were some youth that were also there who told stories who were living on the street, and some who were couch surfing, like you said, and bringing in, and when they finally found a place, brought in others. How articulate and hopeful these youth were, and the stories, what they've lived through, like since they were 14 and now they're 18, unbelievable. So, I mean, they're doing terrific work, and I want to give a shout out. The Social Planning Research Council is working on them. There's a Youth Street Collaborative. We'll mention the way to goes. But I learned so much that day, and you make an excellent point, Lauren. There's more for us to learn. But if you know someone who might be without a home, whether they're on a couch or they're standing in alleyways, let's help them.
Yep.
The weather's getting bad.
The true spirit of Christmas.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay, it's partly why the campaign launched now. Let's talk about something else that's going on in town. It has to do with homes as well. And these are homeowners who have homes. The city wanted to expropriate for the whole Pan Am thing. Didn't happen. Now here's what they're left with. Lauren, just the facts, please.
Only the facts. Pan Am Gems City expropriated properties on Tiffany Street to prepare for a Pan Am Stadium in the West Harbour. 3 homeowners now are fighting City Hall for compensation for losses and concerns about the property values.
So West Harbour looked like it was going to happen. The city expropriated, spent millions on all kinds of land, and now they're left with a street with a couple of houses, big empty spaces. What does that do to their property values? You know, is this a David Goliath story, and is it fair? Should the city just pay out what is really a small amount to these homes as a kind of, sorry, we got it wrong on Pan Am?
See, I think this story harkens back to our first one. That's a classic example of true leadership right there. You buy up all the homes, you kick everybody out, and then you find out that the stadium's absolutely not happening there. We guessed wrong as a city and made a huge mistake. Why it is that those homes remain and they didn't take the buyout is their personal decision, I suppose. I don't necessarily understand it. But for me, yes, their neighborhood is completely destroyed. Not that it was so spectacular to begin with, but now it looks like a post-apocalyptic war site.
Yeah, someone said it looks like teeth missing in a mouth.
No, it's just terrible. And I think the bigger issue, I don't think it's going to take the city a whole lot of dough to satisfy the remaining residents.
No, it's very small compared to everything else. And as I was learning on this today, we're on the same page on this, Lauren. You know, you have the right when you're being expropriated to take it to an appeal. You're not likely to win but the legislation is set up to give you some sort of recompense because it's stacked against you. These are big cities that are doing this. But, you know, given all of that's happened and now their property values are where they are, I think the city should just, you know, stop fighting these 3 homeowners, give them the little bit that they're asking for, and let's move on from the Pan Am nightmare of the West Harbour.
The bigger issue for me, Laura, is, you know, we now as a municipality own all that terrible toxic land. How about we do something with it?
Well, and I'm hoping plans are in place. We just didn't buy it for no reason. And the whole Pan Am thing was complicated. I think you and I both wanted West Harbour. At least I know I certainly did. Hopefully they'll use it for something good going forward. Okay, let's get to our last issue. But first, a couple of quick thank yous. I want to thank Pennington's, as always, for helping to make me look good with clothing and jewelry, and Madison Avenue for doing my hair, and not Lauren's today. I don't want people to make that mistake. Okay, shave his mustache.
See you soon, though, Reno. Yeah. It's time.
Okay, this is also a building-related issue, and we're going to end on here. And this is that Sanford School is being torn down. It obviously has some heritage value to it. It's a beautiful old building. We saw the tearing down of the school board downtown. These have been in the plans for a while. Only the facts on this.
Sure. Heritage demo, Sanford Avenue School slated to be torn down. The school has heritage significance but not designation. Councillor Brian McCaddy says city's heritage advocates, including himself, are, quote, not organized.
So it looks like it's placing the blame on the heritage community in town. And I mean, Councillor McCaddy being a part of that group, but is that a fair criticism from your point of view?
I think there's something very telling when the school board administration, the trustees, they say that they approved the demolition of that building and applied for the demolition permit a year ago. This was a done deal. We seem to have the same activists jumping up and down, too little, too late. Now, that being said, not every building is worth saving. And outside of an architecture and a historical point of view, we need to talk about sustainable reuse in terms of financial sustainability, not in terms of sustaining the bricks and mortar. It's my understanding that Councillor McCaddy is being extremely proactive, talking to developers, trying to pitch some sort of way to save the day on that building. So it's not a dead issue yet, but the activists need to become decision makers. You want to save a building? Buy it and do something with it.
Or also maybe have a strategy in place where they go out proactively, identify these buildings, put them on some sort of list.
Before the demolition permit is issued.
Because you know what? I might be more on your side of things, but I don't like to see buildings come down either. It's a beautiful building. I'm not a heritage activist, but if one of their own, staunch supporters is saying we're not organized enough, maybe it's a critique that they can take and work on.
But it's not too late. If they can find the right deal with the developers for the right use, that's going to be the way we need to do things, not by starting Facebook campaigns.
Well, especially not too late. I mean, they can be effective, but it's about getting the right buildings designated, and the rest, as you said, maybe having some other strategies.
But by liking something on Facebook doesn't make it a proper business plan. It doesn't.
Thank you for that important...
No, I'm not sure everyone understands that.
I think they do. It's merely a tactic in the campaign strategy. Okay, let's end, as we always try to, on a positive note with the way to goes. Loren, you're up.
Yes, please. Way to go for the good behavior of our neighbors on the streets of Toronto following Sunday's Grey Cup. So, Argo fans, Southern Ontario, well behaved. Way to go.
Kind of sad to me that we even have to say that. Speaking of well-behaved and way to go, the Pee Wee Glambrook Rangers had a major victory this past weekend in the U.S. They beat Toronto, Caledon, Pennsylvania, Whitby, and New Jersey to win the weekend's Pittsburgh Thanksgiving Classic. A big deal for a local Hamilton team. Way to go, and of course, Nat Krabavik in there too.
A way to go for a better than normal voter turnout for last night's 3 federal by-elections. An additional way to go to Prime Minister Harper for maintaining his seats in those by-elections.
Yes, okay. I want to extend the congratulations, but I know you're happy about it. Street Youth Planning Collaborative for their amazing work with street-involved and homeless youth. It really blew me away how effective their programs are, and it gave me a lot of hope. So way to go, guys. I know also they're fans of the show as well. In fact, I heard after that launch, a number of people, as you know, we gave a lot of time to the issue around homelessness and poverty on this show, Loren, as we have over the last couple of years of the O Show, because so many people in this community struggle with it, and they watch our program. I found out the person who's helping running that collaborative watches the O Show as well, and so, you know, Erica, you're doing great work, and the youth who spoke were the, with no offense to Glenna Harris, who was amazing, they were the best speakers of the day because they were so full of torment and hope at the same time. It was mind-blowing. I wish we could share them with you here in the program. I don't think we have tape of that. So to all of you, a shout out. And I want to give one more note. As you know, here on the O Show, we like your feedback, and people often, I'm sure with you as well, Loren, walk up to you. I know they do at events and say this, say that on the show. Well, there's a parking attendant who works just behind the Hamilton Club there on James, and he's taking his citizenship test. He's had some struggles with it, says it's gotten pretty hard to write them, and wants us to talk more about immigration. Of course, we're a local show. But let me tie this back. First of all, I hope your test went well today. I wish you the best on it. And you probably know more about Canada than I do now. From what I understand, the test is tough. But also something that the city provided at the National Housing Day that we haven't mentioned yet was a guide to finding homes in Hamilton. And they put also focus on helping people who are immigrating to be able to find a home as well. So those are new tools available, I'm sure, through the city website. So good luck on the test. Loren, have a wonderful week.
Right back at you.
Well, let's leave you with the tweet of the week. It's a good one.